This one will leave you shocked. There's a growing trend led by the modern left of hosting blackout events where attendance is exclusively for black individuals. Many people are sounding the alarm bells because it's basically taking us back to the days of segregation, where people were not allowed to do many things because of their skin color. One of those people is Piers Morgan, who invited Imarn Ayton, a BLM activist, along with Esther Krakow. As expected, the ideologically driven activist was quick to resort to name-calling and framing Piers as a racist, leading to the segment being cut short. But before I delve deeper into it, make sure to subscribe for more discussions just like this.
Imarn Ayton. All right, Imarn, I'm just trying to picture what would happen if I put on a theatrical production in London and it said it was for whites only, or people identifying as white, which is obviously a ludicrous phrase, but you would go nuts. You would say that is blatant racism, segregation, dragged us kicking and screaming back to the dark days of appalling bigotry. You would?
Well, it depends on the context, right?
There's no whites-only audience.
It depends on the context.
No black people allowed. What would you say?
Well, I think you're perfectly right. It would be akin to racists finding more ways to be more racist.
So why is it okay this way around?
Okay, so we have to put it into context. It was 1 out of the 29 shows.
Doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Let's put it into context, Piers. You want to forget about context. Context is everything. It is 1 out of the 29 shows that was targeted towards black people. And at no point did they say certain people were not excluded. In fact, they actually said it verbatim on their website. No one is excluded, and yet you have found racism.
No. I just read the rest of what they said. It's pretty clear. You are not supposed to go if you're not black.
No, please consider booking other dates.
Right, exactly.
I think the context, you're right, the context is important. I think the issue here is when it's talking about sort of, blackouts, and it's trying to gather an audience of black people that they believe have the same experience.
Right. Exactly.
This doesn't transpose the same way it does in the US and the UK, right? A black person in the UK could be black African, black British, black from the Caribbean, right? In the US, the conversation around race is completely different, and that's why it's a problem. Obviously, when you bring this to the UK, people are going to be like, what are you talking about?
Piers is absolutely right. These events are nothing but modern segregation that contradicts the principles of inclusivity and equality that our modern societies strive towards. By limiting attendance based on race, these events perpetuate divisions within the community, reinforcing a sense of separation that civil rights movements have worked so hard to eliminate. You see, we all know segregation has historically been used to divide and devalue people based on racial and ethnic lines. Reviving such practices under any guise, even with guising it under the intention of empowerment or solidarity, is problematic. It inadvertently echoes a past where segregation was used as a tool of oppression and exclusion. It also sets a dangerous precedent that could justify similar practices by other groups, potentially leading to increased racial tensions and divisions. Even the Prime Minister of UK, Rishi Sunak, weighed in on this topic where his spokesperson said, quote, "The Prime Minister is a big supporter of the arts and he believes that the arts should be inclusive and open to everyone, and restricting audiences on the basis of race would be wrong and divisive." I find it hilarious how Imarn quickly labels a whiteout event as being racist, but she encourages the blackout events and defends them religiously. She's beyond hypocritical and inconsistent with her arguments. This is nothing but a double standard where the acceptability of segregationist practices depends on who's organizing or benefiting from them, rather than on universal principles of equality and inclusivity. These hypocrisies are not only undermining the credibility of those who advocate for such events, but also damaging the broader cause of fighting racism. It conveys a message that racial separation is acceptable if framed a certain way, contradicting the foundational belief that all forms of racism and segregation are inherently wrong.
Can you see any merit to it?
Of course not. But I don't even think it makes sense in the American context.
Why is that? If you're talking about safe spaces, because let's just be clear, we're talking about safe spaces.
Because
here,
I think
what do you mean safe space? What does that mean?
Okay, so
you wouldn't feel safe if I came along?
No. Again, context. We're talking about a play that was done by black people for black people, targeted for black people.
So
what? One out of the. Again, let's just be clear, because you're clearly not getting this message. It is basically akin to the disabled community putting on 29 shows, and 29 shows about disabilities, and then one of those shows is targeted towards the disabled community. That is what it is akin to, and yet you have a problem. Why is that, Piers? Have you genuinely asked yourself why it's different between disabilities or disabled community or Jewish, but when it comes to black,
my problem is that you have already conceded that if it was the other way round, and this was a whites-only night of this theatrical performance, you would say racist. And that's my problem.
Safe spaces. It's
what
the double standard. disproportionately
Can I
affected
just
by
ask
racism. So
why-
therefore, it's about safe spaces. This play
I don't
is about
think this
racism.
kind- I don't
so
think-
therefore, we should have a safe space for black people as we are disproportionately affected by
patronising
racism.
them?
I don't think
No,
you
it's
tackle.
not.
I
You
don't.
wouldn't say that to a woman.
No.
You wouldn't say that to
Yes,
a woman
I
when she
would.
was talking about abuse, and therefore she wanted, and they wanted, and she wanted
All right,
a safe
let Esther
space.
respond.
I'm sorry.
You wouldn't say that.
The idea of safe spaces and black people needing safe spaces is
When
extremely
talking about
patronising.
racism. But when talking about racism,
Okay,
Let her
but
finish.
what about
It
Asian?
isn't.
What about
It
Asian
isn't.
people? Do Asian people need safe spaces
when
from
talking,
racism?
when talking
No,
about
do Asian
racism,
people?
when
No, but they-
I'm
come
answering
on,
your
but we don't
question.
have this
When
conversation.
talking
Let
about,
Esther finish.
No, she just asked me a question, so I'm answering it. When talking about Asian racism, I think they deserve a bit of a safe space. When they're
From
talking
who?
about
From-
their
from
own
who?
experiences,
From black people or from white people?
From all types of people that are going
Really?
to
All right, let
promote
Esther-
judgment.
Esther.
Because it's about being free of judgment.
Esther, let me
I'm
ask you.
sorry, I
Esther,
think
let me
free
ask
of
you.
white
Hang-
judgment,
Mark-
free of
Mark-
Asian
Mark,
judgment,
let
free
Esther-
of all types
Let somebody
of
else speak,
judgment.
please.
No, I'm going to.
Or we're going to have a
No
safe space where you get removed so that only I can be heard speaking.
Happily, and I'll say bye to you both.
I will have a one night only. Only
Happily.
Piers.
Happily, I'll say bye to
Only
you both. I'll
Piers-
see you on Saturday. I'll say bye
I'll
to
have a
you.
I'll
and
have
I
one
won't be
night of the
back,
show
no
where
problem.
only I am allowed to speak and you're not allowed to because of your skin colour. How would you like that?
Well, that's called racism.
Exactly.
isn't it?
Exactly my point.
No, it's not.
This proves the existence of a major issue that our modern societies are facing. Identity politics has increasingly shifted the focus from shared national identity to race and ethnicity. This approach focuses on differences rather than the commons, and thus nationalities overshadowed by racial and ethnic identities, which are often highlighted as the primary aspect of an individual's identity, leading to a deeply fragmented society. Multiculturalism isn't a bad or wrong concept, but it thrives when diverse groups celebrate their unique cultural heritages while simultaneously identifying with and contributing to the nation as a whole. However, with extensive focus on identity politics, individuals are feeling more loyalty to their racial or ethnic groups than to the nation, weakening national unity. Additionally, when identity politics dominates, it demands that people view every political, social, or economic issue through the lens of race and ethnicity. This perspective distorts issues and leads to policies that focus on the past rather than addressing current realities and practical solutions for everyone. I think that if we continue going down the path without addressing the growing fragmentation, society will become irreparably divided. The left has to realize that the strength of a nation comes from its ability to unite people around shared values and goals, despite their diverse backgrounds.
What would most black friends of yours or family think about this? I mean, in other words, is it something where a lot of black people might go, you know what, actually, I can see some merit to this?
They would see it as an American importation, right?
Does that mean necessarily a bad thing?
I think that it would.
No, it's not.
It would be seen. It would be seen as ridiculous, but ridiculously, particularly American, right? Because black people are not a monolith, which we can all agree on. Black people come from various parts of the world. They have different
But they
cultures.
share similar
This
experiences.
idea that there is a shared black experience,
But they
I think,
share
is
similar ex-
ludicrous.
but they
Other
do.
than the color
They
of our
do.
skin.
No,
But I
they
don't.
do.
But you have to
But you
accept there are
just-
many connotations you're adding to
But
that.
by your own
I could
testament,
say
you
that.
said
I
that
could
we
say
have
that
shared
as a black
experiences
person, I've
by
faced more racism from Asian and Middle Eastern people, so I should have a safe space from those people. Can you even
That's if you want to
identify
be
them?
specific.
No,
If
but
you want
that's
to be
but that's
specific, you
that's
have the right to
ridiculous.
I don't think.
You
Okay,
have
let
the
me
right to do
interrupt.
that if you've been
let me
abused.
speak.
You
I
have the
don't
right
think
to do
any
that as
form of
well.
art should ever be exclusionary on the grounds of skin colour, regardless of who it's targeted to or who it's made by.
We're talking about race
The
equity.
whole point of art is it should be for everybody.
But we're talking about race equity.
For
in this
everybody.
moment.
No.
Context.
I don't. No, it's not right. There's nothing racially equal about this.
Piers.
It's racially unequal. You're saying no
Piers.
white people can come.
Context.
It's ridiculous.
What's the play about, Piers?
I've heard your art.
What's the play
It
about?
doesn't matter what it's
Yes,
about.
it does, and
doesn't.
that's your issue. You want to negate context, and
No,
there is no
it doesn't
argument
matter if
from
every-
both of us without context. You know this, and yet you try to negate it.
No,
every
I don't
single
know
time
this.
here.
No, you
Deal
can't-
with the context, and if you
you
can't deal
can't-
with it, don't come with an
You
argument.
can't tell
deal
me.
with the context.
You can't tell me what I'm thinking.
No, exactly. But that's
right?
what you do to me.
Or what my opinion
and that's what
is.
people like you do to me.
People like
and
me?
Yes.
What do you mean
yes,
people like me?
Prejudice, racially prejudiced people like yourself. That's what you do. That's why we need safe spaces.
You're calling me racially prejudiced.
I've done that several times, Piers. Why are you surprised?
Why are
What's
you
going
saying
on?
that?
Ignorance doesn't actually suit you.
That's ignorant, actually.
No,
what you
no,
just
it's
said.
not. I've just told you
I'm
that
not
several
racially
times.
prejudiced.
Okay,
and
so
what you just said
what's
is very
prejudice,
offensive.
Piers?
And you
What's
shouldn't be
prejudice,
saying
Piers?
that.
Piers, what's prejudice?
Huh?
What's prejudice?
If you're
You've been
racially
learning.
prejudiced, you are a racist.
What's prejudice?
That's what you just called
Have you
me.
been learning? What's
I'm not
prejudice?
accepting that. Sorry.
What's prejudice?
Esther, will you go and watch this?
Swiftly
No,
move
but I'm-
on.
No, I don't think you should be calling me a racist.
Swiftly move
It's ridiculous.
on. I've done it several times, and yet you have a problem.
then you're
with the
wrong
third
every time.
I did it last year. You're talking
Well,
about
good
it
for
today as
you.
if it's a new surprise.
It's
It's,
a-
not.
it's
I
a-
told you last year you were racially
it's a
prejudiced, and I'm
lazy-
telling you again
it's a
today.
lazy
and yet
thing
you
to
have
say.
no argument.
It's a
That's
lazy
your
thing to
argument.
say.
Lazy thing to say. Well done.
Because I'm
Piers.
not
You're doing
racially
well.
prejudiced. Never never have been.
What's racial prejudice, Piers?
It's being
Answer
a
the question.
racist.
Answer the question.
It's judging
And that's
people
what you do.
prejudicially
That's what you
on
do.
their skin colour.
That's what you do.
Actually, rather
That
like what
is
this
what
theatrical
you
production
do.
is doing.
That's
All right.
what you do.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you both very much.
Piers did the right thing by cutting this interview short because engaging in a meaningful conversation with someone deeply entrenched in leftist ideology in this sense is a formidable challenge and does not end well in most cases. Their mindset's driven by a moral framework that categorizes issues and opinions into strict binaries of right and wrong, often based on identity politics and intersectional theory. Those who do not fully subscribe to their views are dismissed as just incorrect, but morally corrupt. This approach does not merely prioritize winning an argument, it seeks to morally discredit the opposition, which discourages further engagement and exploration of complex social issues. And this is exactly what happened during this interview, where Piers had to cut the segment short because of Iman and essentially calling him a racist, since she ran out of arguments to make if you consider anything she provided in this interview as an argument in the first place. Which takes me to my next point, how they take over the discourse by actively silencing opposition. These ideologically entrenched people employ the simple tactic of disrupting the opposing speaker by talking over them or acting as a toddler in the case of Amarn. They justify doing so under the guise of combating hate speech or protecting marginalized groups. This monopolization of discourse only limits diversity of thought and alienates those who might otherwise be sympathetic to some progressive causes. And the refusal to engage in reasonable discussion and the focus on ideological purity results in echo chambers where no real progress is made. I think for a society to thrive on diverse viewpoints, it must encourage open conversation, where ideas can be challenged and refined, not where dissent is silenced and ideological conformity is enforced. What are your thoughts? Do you think blackout events are racist? Let's get the conversation rolling in the comments down below.